And welcome to the Panther-Lair.com weekend recap. It's Monday morning, it's August 1st, and we are here to get you up to speed on everything you need heading into the new week. Of course, you know the website by now, Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting, which you can try all for free for the month of August with our special kickoff 2022 promotion. Check the website for details, Panther-Lair.com. And of course, you're right here on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, the place to find all kinds of exclusive Pitt video content. Wednesday nights, we have our live stream where we go live at 8:30 to talk about everything going on in the world of Pitt sports. I talk, you comment, you ask questions, we have a discussion, a back and forth. It's great. It's one of my favorite things we do all week, and it happens right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And then every Monday morning, we have the weekend recap, where we just kind of get you up to speed on everything. Anything you might have missed last week, anything you need to be caught up on, everything so that when you go into work on Monday morning, and you're talking to your friends and you want to impress them with all of your Pitt knowledge, this 15 or 20 minutes or however long we take here on the weekend recap, it'll give you all the information and the knowledge that you need to be ready to go have those conversations with coworkers, colleagues, friends, family, whoever it may be. We do this every Monday morning, and if you want to make sure you never miss a weekend recap or a Wednesday night live stream, subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. If you're already subscribed, we appreciate that. Like the video, comment, and all those things that helps us spread the word and get more exposure and attention for these videos. I enjoy doing them, and I hope you enjoy watching them. And the way to show that you enjoy watching it, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Of course, it's Monday, August 1st, and you see right up there at the top, the number one story for the week. Camp is here. It's finally here. August 1st, the first day of training camp for Pitt 2022. The long summer is over. The long off season is over. Football is here. You still have another month until the actual games are being played, but the team is practicing. They reported yesterday on Sunday, and they're on the practice field this morning for the first practice of training camp, the first one to count down to the backyard brawl against West Virginia at Heinz Field on September 1st. That's a big one. Obviously, we all know the implications of that game and the implications of the game that follows it and the implications of the 10 games after that. We know the implications of the 2022 season and what they mean for Pitt football, what they can mean for Pat Narduzzi. We know all of those things. We've talked about all those things for the last 8 months. We'll continue talking about all of those things, certainly for the next 5 weeks as we lead into this game, the season opener. But for now, training camp is here. And the first real steps toward building a follow-up to the 2021 season is starting now. This is where it begins. And it's where it begins for this team, although certainly spring camp, off-season workouts, all those things are contributing to it and leading to it. It's not like they haven't been doing any football activities for the last 8 months, but this is sort of the official start. This is when it feels real, when it feels like things are happening. And so we've waited all this time since the Peach Bowl. We've gone through spring camp. We've gone through the Jordan Addison saga. We watched Kenny Pickett get drafted to the Steelers. We've seen all the commitments in the recruiting activity through the month of June. All of these things. We've seen them all. We've watched them all. And now everything it's been leading up to is here. It's the start of training camp. And there's going to be a lot that happens over the course of the next 4 or 5 weeks. There are going to be a lot of storylines that develop. There are going to be players who ascend and players who fall and players who get hurt and players who stay healthy and players who impress and players who move up the depth chart or down the depth chart. All those things. We're going to guess at the depth chart. We're going to be given little clues and hints by the coaches and the players. You know how training camp goes. They'll have practices in pads. They'll have practices in shorts. They'll have scrimmages. They'll change the jersey colors. The team that wins, the offense wins the scrimmage or the defense wins the scrimmage. They'll get the blue jerseys, like Rodney Hammond right there in that picture from spring camp where he's wearing a blue jersey, where the offense must have come out on top. And we'll see the sure things, those guys that we rely on. We'll talk about sure things in a minute. You see it's number 3 up there. We'll talk about, those guys will do what they're supposed to do, and we'll hear about them. We'll hear about how they're leading the team, and we'll talk to Servassier, Dennison, Haba Baldonado, and all those guys. We'll talk to the quarterbacks all the time. We'll talk to the offensive line. We'll talk to the coaches, and we're going to hear so much talk about Pitt football, all leading up to the backyard brawl. And while that's the ultimate goal, that game is the ultimate final point. That's what you have circled on your calendar. That's what we're all counting down the days to. We're not counting down the days to August 1st. We're counting down the days to September 1st. But a major milepost along that path is right now, August 1st. This is when it's real. This is when the season starts. The offseason, to me, ends when training camp starts. And here we are. We made it. Now, we've obviously spent a lot of time on Panther-Lair.com over the last couple of weeks talking about the big storylines facing the team heading into training camp, talking about the big question marks and the sure things and the newcomers and the guys who could surprise and the this and the that. And we've broken down position by position all the way through the team, all 10 positions, offense, defense, how the recruiting went over the course of the last 5 years. It's our Anatomy of a Position series. If you haven't seen that on Panther-Lair.com, I highly recommend it. It breaks down the history of every position room and how they came together and what the outlook is for 2022. But through all of that, through all of the talk about what's going to define this season and what's going to make this season for this team, point number 2 right there, if I can get my finger on, is something I've been saying all offseason. It's what I will continue to say throughout the month of August. And what I'm going to say all season, it's all about quarterback. That's all. That's really what it's going to come down to. And that doesn't mean that the offensive line is not important. That doesn't mean that the defensive players are not important. That doesn't mean that the skill guys are not important. It certainly doesn't mean that special teams is not important. We know it is. And special teams is one of those question marks, actually, that we have, particularly the punter position. But it all pales in comparison to the quarterback. Well, I should say, the issues on special teams pale in comparison to the questions about the quarterback position. All those other things, the defense, the offensive line, the skill players, you feel pretty good about almost all of those guys. There are a couple of holes to fill in. They got to find a couple outside linebackers. You need a little depth. You need a second tight end to step up. You need these receivers to do what I think they're capable of. You have a few things here and there. But for the most part, you feel pretty good at about, let's say, 18, 19, maybe 20 of the starting positions on offense and defense. But that one big question mark that you have is the difference between going back to 8 wins and going back to Charlotte. And it's the quarterback. And the quarterback's, I don't know when Pat Narduzzi is going to name a starter. I don't know when Pat Narduzzi is going to say, this is our guy. He had some stuff at the ACC Media Day that the players will be the ones who decide it, by which I think he means that he'll be able to tell because the players will make it clear of who they're following and who has earned their respect and all that. Like, there's going to be so much talk over the next however many weeks until Pat Narduzzi decides to name a starter, and he might not name a starter until September 1st. There's going to be so much talk. But the end result's going to be the same. Kedon Slovis is going to be the starting quarterback on this team. I don't even think I would go so far as to say it's the worst kept secret. I think everyone understands that. I think if Nick Patty had outplayed Kedon Slovis by a considerable amount in spring camp, or if he would in training camp, I think maybe the situation would be different. But Kedon Slovis came to Pitt to be the starting quarterback. Pitt recruited Kedon Slovis to be the starting quarterback. And Kedon Slovis is going to be the starting quarterback. When we talk about the questions surrounding quarterback, there are several we can bring up, and there are several we can discuss. Who the quarterback is, who the starting quarterback will be, to me is not a topic to discuss. It's not a question to ask. It's going to be Kedon Slovis. Now, the questions you ask are, is he 100% healthy? I mean, he seemed healthy in the spring, but some of his fall off in 2021 at USC seemed to be tied to injuries. How has he recovered from those injuries? Is he 100% healthy? Is he ready to go out and play at a high level? That's a question. Can he get back to the level he played in 2019 and 2020? That's a question. How does he adapt to Pitt's offense? Learning a new offense basically since January. He's going to have 9 months in the offense by the time the season opener gets here. 8 months, really. How has he done with that? How has he developed his chemistry with Konate Mumfield and Bub Means and Jared Wayne and Jaden Bradley and Jalen Barton? How has he done there? How is his chemistry with Owen Drexel? Do those guys see the same things? Him and the offensive line, do they understand each other? When they look at the defense, do they see the same things? Because Kenny Pickett and his offensive linemen saw the same things because they'd worked together for years in the same offense for years. Now you've got a new coordinator. You've got a new offense. You've got a new scheme. How is Keaton Slovis going to fit in that scheme? Those are all legitimate questions. Who is going to be the starting quarterback? It's not a question we need to ask because the answer is known. It's going to be him. Now, I learned a long time ago, incidentally, somewhere around the time of a certain Pitt game against West Virginia and Morgantown, 15 years ago, I learned that you never say never. Anything is possible. Even the most unlikely outcome still has the slightest chance of happening. And so we're not going to say never with regards to the quarterback competition, but it's going to be Slovis. I'm not going to call that a sure thing because I've got 5 other sure things that I would say I have no doubts about whatsoever. Like Servassier Dennis. Servassier Dennis, I think, and I don't think he's under the radar. I don't think he's underrated. I don't think it's sort of quietly or sneakily or anything like that. I think Pitt fans understand. When the guy has 24 tackles for loss over the last 2 seasons, in one of those seasons where he had 14 and a half tackles for loss, he only played 10 games. I think everybody knows who he is, what he is, and what he means to this defense. He is the center of the defense. He's a smart player. He's a physical player. I think he's a really good linebacker. He can play all 3 linebacker spots, which is going to be huge for this team as they look to replace the 2 outside linebackers. His best spot, he can help the team the most, I think, at middle linebacker. But if someone like Brandon George can step up, then you're covered on one of the outside spots because Dennis can play out there. He played both spots last year. He played inside and outside. But ideally, you would have Servassier Dennis in the middle of the defense, making all the calls, getting everyone lined up, having everyone in the right place, and then making plays. A play like that intercepted shovel pass against Clemson that he took 50 yards for a touchdown, there aren't a lot of guys who can make that play physically, but there aren't a lot of guys who can make that play mentally, who can recognize it and make the play. And that's the kind of thing Servassier Dennis can do. He is, and I wrote this, he's the foundation of the defense. And this is a defense that has some really good players. I'm going to talk about a couple other guys in this 5 sure things, but he's the one that I would go to first. And right behind him, I would go to the guy who's right in front of him, Elijah Cansey. Cansey's just the latest in a line of smaller playmaking defensive tackles. And it's a lineage that goes back to like Mick Williams in 2009. Aaron Donald, Jalen Twyman since then, and then Elijah Cansey. And this is a guy who last year had what? I had his stats this season. 13 tackles for loss last year and 7 sacks. A guy who had 13 tackles for loss and 7 sacks, first team all-conference. And I think he actually could have another breakout performance this year. That was clearly a breakout season. I think he can do even better. I think he can do better than 13 tackles for loss. And I think he can do better than 7 sacks. Because when you talk to him in the spring and you talk to Charlie Partridge, the defensive line coach in spring camp, they both felt like Cansey has another level he can get to. The physical stuff is there, but with more experience, with more knowledge, with more film, more understanding of how to watch film and how to study the game, he can be even better, which is scary. And then the other 2 guys, and Haba Baldonado should be on this list. I would concede that point, but I'll tell you 2 guys that I would point to as sure things on the back end of the defense: Eric Hallett and Brandon Hill. And these guys are basically 2-year starters, effectively. I think Hallett has started the last 18 games. Hill has started 15 out of those 18 games. And they started all of these games last season together. And that's huge. I really don't think it can be overstated how important that is to have that kind of experience at the safety positions. Brandon Hill, playmaking, tackling machine at the strong safety, that boundary safety, short side of the field position. And then Eric Hallett, a guy with, like I say, 18 consecutive starts, 17 of which were at this field safety position. And it's a position where every year we've seen guys get better at it. You know what I mean? Jordan Whitehead improved so much from one year to the next, playing that field safety position. Damar Hamlin improved so much one year to the next, playing that field safety position, because it's a position with so much responsibility and is so crucial to this defense that, putting a guy out there for the first time, it's a wild ride. And now he's got that full year of experience. And Brandon Hill next to him has that full year of experience. And I think those two guys are primed to have a big, big year. They're still going to have plays where they look bad. And it's not always going to be their fault. A lot of times it's on the linebackers. When the safeties end up looking like they're getting victimized, it's because the linebackers didn't do their jobs. It all works together. It's a very cohesive sort of defensive scheme. But on the whole, those two guys I think are going to be really, really good and really, really, really reliable on the back end. Another sure thing, flipping over to offense, Gavin Bartholomew. And he's a guy coming into his sophomore year, so he's still kind of young. And you say, well, he's only a second-year player. Is he really a sure thing yet? And I understand that, but I think he is. I think he was shorthanded. He caught like 28. He was targeted 29 times, and he had 28 catches. So he caught 20 out of 29 passes thrown to him. I think that percentage will come down a little bit this year when he's catching different types of passes, more out of a natural tight end position. But I really think he's one of the sure things on an offense that has a lot of sure things. Most of the offensive line I would put into the category of a sure thing. One other guy that I'm going to mention here in a second I would put in the category of a sure thing. I think Gavin Bartholomew is a sure thing for this offense. And I think he's going to be one of the real assets and weapons for Keaton Slovis when they play this year. And then my fifth sure thing, and is a guy who I do think is underrated. And I felt this for the last couple of years. I think Pitt fans have come to appreciate him more. Last year, I think it went up from where it was a year earlier. But Jared Wayne, I think, is a sure thing. He caught 73% of his passes last year. He averaged 14 yards per catch. And he was pretty much he was the number 2 receiver on the team. Taysir Mack dealt with injuries. But really, when you look at the stats, Wayne was second to Jordan Addison in basically every receiving category. He was tied for second on the team in receiving touchdowns. He was second among the receivers in missed tackles forced. He was second in receiving first downs gained. He was second among receivers in contested catches, and second among the receivers in yards after the catch. He just is a really reliable guy. And last year, before the season, I kept talking about him being a possession receiver. And that would be the role that he could fill. And I don't mean that in any kind of like derogatory or negative way. I think that it's an important role, and I think he's really good in that role. And I think he's going to excel even more this year and probably have some opportunities to make some plays. Although with a couple other guys emerging, it'll be interesting to see if he's got those opportunities or if he stays more in that possession role. But he's so good as a possession receiver that I just think he's going to be, he's a sure thing. He's a really reliable, sure thing. Number 4 up there, 5 players to watch. And I wrote about this in the 3-2-1 column on Friday. 5 guys that I'm sort of irrationally high on is how I termed it. Guys where I just have really high expectations for these players this year. And it's not necessarily based on a whole lot. It's just me thinking they're going to be really good. And the first 2 that I mentioned out of these 5 are the 2 third-year outside linebackers, Bengali Kamara and Solomon DeShields. These guys, first of all, if you stand next to them, you see them in person, you just say, these guys look like NFL players. They are built. They're like 6'2", 6'3", 235. They have ideal NFL size, and they can both run. DeShields was a wide receiver. I think even played some quarterback maybe in high school. Kamara was a safety. He was a guy who, some analysts and evaluators and even some college coaches, I think, were unsure about Bengali Kamara because they thought he was either not big enough to be a linebacker and not fast enough to be a safety. Well, I don't know if he's fast enough to be a safety, but he has grown to be big enough to be a linebacker, and he's got enough speed to be able to play well at that position. I think those two guys are going to win the starting jobs. I think they'll be the starting outside linebackers. Shane Simon could throw a wrench into that. I think he's impressed, the transfer from Notre Dame. I think he could be really good and get a lot of snaps out there. But they're going to rotate the outside linebackers. So, I mean, DeShields and Kamara and Simon and maybe a guy like Buddy Mack or Tyler Wiltz maybe, they're going to play a lot. They're all going to play a lot, in addition to Servassier Dennis and Brandon George in the middle. But I think Kamara and DeShields are just in line for just huge seasons. I think those guys are going to play really well, and they're going to be a force out there. I mean, they're freaks. They are physical freaks. Who is it? Bruce Feldman does the freaks list every year of just freaks in college football. I mean, I think those two guys should be on it. I tell you another guy that I like on the defense from that class, that same 2020 recruiting class, Dayon Hayes. I think Dayon Hayes is going to have a huge year this year. He's behind three veteran guys in Haba Baldonado and John Morgan and Deslin Alexandra. I think he'll force his way into more snaps. I don't know if he'll play more snaps than one of those three, but he's going to force his way into more snaps. He's going to force his way on the field, and he's going to make a lot of plays. And even if he ends up with fewer snaps than those guys, I think he's going to produce. You know what I mean? I think he'll have a real high production to snap ratio. You know what I mean? I think for the number of snaps that he gets, I think he's going to make a whole lot of plays. And then on offense, there are two guys that I think you really, I'm really high on them. Higher than I think their resume would say I should be. And one is Bub Means. I think Bub Means is going to be a real player for this offense. I think he's going to be a surprise breakout playmaker at receiver. I think Konate Mumfield is going to be the leading receiver. I think Jared Wayne's probably going to be right behind him. But I think Bub Means is going to make a lot of plays to win games. He's a downfield threat. It's what he was at Louisiana Tech. I think that's what he'll be again. A vertical, he'll attack vertically. I think that's what he does well. He's got size and speed, and I think they're going to use him that way, probably with great success. I have really high expectations for Bub Means based on not a whole lot. Although, he didn't catch that many passes at Louisiana Tech. He averaged a ton of yards per catch. He averaged a ton of, his average depth of target was huge, way bigger than anybody on Pitt's team last year. But he didn't do a whole lot. I've heard really good things about him from people around Pitt. But there's not a whole lot to base it on. But I think he's gonna have a great season. And then the fifth guy that I would say that I'm irrationally high on is Izzy Abanikanda. And this is a junior who was Pitt's leading rusher last year. Is it crazy to say? I mean, can you really be irrationally high on someone who was the team's leading rusher? And I would say yes, and not because I expect him to be good, but because of how good I expect him to be. I think if Izzy Abanikanda stays healthy and plays 12, 13, 14 games, he's easily over 1,000 yards. First time Pitt's had a 1,000-yard rusher since 2018. And I think he probably gets like 500 receiving yards or something like that. I think he is one of the best playmakers on the team. I think he's one of the guys who can truly take over a game. I think he's an NFL running back. And my guess, my completely rational prediction for Izzy Abanikanda is he has a great season this year and he's gone. You know what I mean? He's a running back. If you have a great season as a junior running back, you got to go. And that's what I expect out of Izzy Abanikanda. I think he's going to be a clear lead running back, a number one back, and he's going to be one of the best running backs in the ACC. And I think he leaves and goes to the NFL after this year. I'm that high on him. If he stays healthy, I think that's how good he can be. That's the talent he's got. So those five guys I think you should keep an eye on, that I'm irrationally high on. Final point, a concerning quarterback recruiting. Pitt's quarterback commitment, of course, Kenny Minchey. a 3-star prospect who I think is well on his way to 4 stars. I've expected him to get a bump to 4 stars since the beginning of the summer. That whenever they do the next ranking re-release, or re-ranking, they're going to bump him up to 4 stars is where I think he'll be. And great performance at the Elite 11 this summer. And not surprisingly, other schools are taking notice. And he picked up an offer from Notre Dame this week. Now, inevitably, I think if you are a fan of Pitt or a fan of about 50, maybe 55 other teams in college football, and your quarterback commitment gets an offer from Notre Dame, you're a little concerned. Understandably so. It's Notre Dame, right? I'll say right off the bat, I don't know what Kenny Minchey's going to do. I don't know what Kenny Minchey's thinking. I don't know what his reaction is. We're inquiring with Minchey and other sources to sort of get a feel for things. It's still kind of early in the whole thing. I will say there's a couple interesting things. One, Notre Dame is struggling to recruit quarterbacks right now. They have a 4-star commitment in the 2024 class, the guys who are going into their junior years this year. But the guys going into their senior years, who'll be freshmen in college next year, the 2023 class, Notre Dame's striking out. Before Kenny Minchey, they had offered 8 quarterback prospects, and all 8 of them are committed to other schools, including 2 guys who committed to other schools in the beginning of July. So they've been going back to the drawing board. They've been reviewing film and trying to find new options. Kenny Minchey is the 9th quarterback they've offered in the class, according to the Rivals database. Also committed to another school, that school being Pitt. I do think it was interesting that on last night, Kenny Minchey went on a little bit of a retweeting spree, retweeted a few commitment tweets from other guys who were committed to Pitt. Phillip Daniels and I think BJ Williams. He retweeted those guys' announcements of their commitments, which you would think is a positive sign if you're looking to read into social media that way. I think, and I've said this for a while, that I think I said this as early as June, that Pitt would probably have to fight off some competition for Kenny Minchey. Fight off some competition to hold on to him through signing day in December so they could get him signed and get him on campus in January. I thought other schools would make a push for him. Other schools would try to land him because first of all, I think he's a really good quarterback prospect. Second of all, he had a really good performance at the Elite 11. And third, I expect him to have a really good senior season in Nashville. So this kind of thing was always going to happen. It's just a matter of how strong Kenny Minchey is with Pitt and how attracted to the situation he is, because Pitt offers a legitimate chance to compete for playing time and or a starting job next season. All goes according to plan. If it all goes according to plan, Keaton Slovis has a great year this year and goes to the NFL. Nick Patty decides whatever he wants to do. And Kenny Minchey can come in and compete with Nate Yarnell for the starting job if all goes according to plan. Or maybe Derek Kyler sticks around or Nick Patty sticks around him, and we'll see. But there's a real opportunity here, whereas the opportunity may not be as great at Notre Dame. Minchey's going to have to evaluate that for himself. And then also the whole fact of, and I think we sometimes overblow this, but the fact that Notre Dame struck out on other quarterbacks and decided to then offer Kenny Minchey. Does that weigh on him too? The idea of maybe feeling like a plan B if that's how he chooses to perceive it. Now, I think we often talk about that. Why would a kid want to do that when he's, it clearly wasn't the top priority. And we say that, but we've seen it happen plenty of times. Kids get out of their feelings pretty quick and get over it and choose the school that they want to go to. So I'm not expecting Kenny Minchey to hold that against Notre Dame. This one, I think if Pitt holds on to him, it'll be on the strength of Minchey's relationships with Frank Cignetti, with the quarterbacks coach, John DiBiaso, Pat Narduzzi, and then how he perceives the situation at Pitt. If I had to bet right now, I would bet on him sticking. But again, never say never, right? We got 4.5 months until signing day. So there's plenty of time. But that's something to keep an eye on. And when we talk about things that you're going to be talking about this week, Notre Dame offering Pitt's quarterback commitment, that's certainly one of them. It's on the list. But we all know the priority this week is going to be on training camp. It gets started today. They're in the South Side right now practicing this morning. They're going to practice 3 times this week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They practice 4 weekdays a week after that. Kind of on an alternating schedule. We'll have that whole schedule posted at Panther-Lair.com so you can follow along whenever you need to or want to. But this is it. Training camp is underway. The battle for the quarterback job, or at least the wait until Pat Narduzzi announces it, will begin. There's a few other position battles we'll certainly be keeping an eye on. We'll talk about that a lot over the course of the next 4 or 5 weeks. Make sure you stay tuned right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like this video. It's a big help to us. And then tune in on Wednesday nights, 8:30 p.m. every Wednesday night. We have a live stream. It's like a talk show. I talk for a little bit. You post in the comments, in the chat section there. You post comments and questions. I answer your questions, react to your comments, whatever you have to say. We have a good time. It's a good conversation. It's fun every Wednesday night, and hopefully you get a chance to stop by. 8:30 p.m. right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. If you want to make sure you don't forget about it, subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on notifications, and you will know every time we go live. In the meantime, keep it locked. Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. We're going to have all the coverage that you want from training camp. Photos, videos, interviews, analysis, evaluate, what we're hearing, all kinds of stuff. All week. It's going to be, or all month. It's going to be great. We have a special promo now. Check the front page of Panther-Lair.com. You can get the month of August free with our 2022 kickoff promotion. What's better than that? Free Pitt coverage. My only warning, you're going to find out that you really like it and you don't want to give it up, and you're probably going to hold on to that subscription. So Panther-Lair.com. Go check it out. Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Thanks for checking out the weekend recap this week. We appreciate it. Training camp is started. It's going to be a lot of fun. We will talk to you on Wednesday night.